It was the summer of 1983 when a woman in Manhattan Beach, California sparked one of the most expensive and devastating trials in U.S. history, with expenses being up to $15 million. In May of 1983, a woman named Judy Johnson's 2-year-old son started attending the McMartin Preschool. The McMartin Preschool had been a highly recognized education facility in the community and was run by many members of the McMartin family, including the founder, Virginia McMartin, her daughter, Peggy McMartin Bucky, and her grandchildren, Raymond Bucky and Peggy Ann Bucky. On the 10th day that Judy's son had been attending the school, he developed a rash on his butt and had rectal bleeding. Judy noticed it and immediately claimed it was sexual abuse. She then called the Manhattan Beach Police Department to report that her son had been molested at the McMartin Preschool. After she had called the police, her son was interviewed by Detective Jane Hogue, and her son had told the officer that he had been molested by 25-year-old Ray Bucky. Ray Bucky was arrested on September 7, 1983, but was quickly released because of lack of evidence. As a result, Judy wrote a letter to the district attorney claiming that her son was also forced to participate in satanic activities as well as her claims that she made prior. An investigation was soon opened on the school. On September 8, 1983, Police Chief Harry Kohlmeyer sent a letter to 200 McMartin Preschool parents informing them what had happened with Ray Bucky and how he was a suspect of child abuse, and asking for them to ask their children if they had any information. This was the fuel to the fire, and abruptly an overwhelming amount of hysteria came upon all of the parents. After hundreds of interviews were conducted by the Children's Institute International, it was stated that 360 children had been abused. Astrid Heppenstall-Heger was one of the examiners who performed various examinations on the children. After interviewing the children, she recorded some crazy allegations by them, stating that they were forced under tunnels, played a game called Naked Movie Star, where the children were photographed naked, and some of the crazier allegations being them seeing witches fly, also claiming that they had traveled by hot air balloon. All these claims sparked the first McMartin Preschool trial. In August of 1984, the preliminary hearing began, and there was an immense amount of media coverage. The prosecutor, Lael Rubin, started claiming that there were more counts committed, and there were 397 sexual crimes committed among the 7 suspects. The problem with this was that there was little to no evidence, considering that there was no nude photographs of the children discovered. Johnson's son couldn't even identify Ray Bucky in the police lineup. There was no secret rooms found, etc. The hearings consisted of 7 defendants, and they all had their own attorney, and 3 prosecutors. As the hearings continued for months, the prosecution's own team started to develop doubts among what was true and what was not. In 1985, members of the district attorney's office held a meeting, and they decided to dismiss charges against all defendants except Ray and Peggy Bucky. On July 14, 1987, the McMartin trials began. The jury consisted of many different people, including 8 males and 4 females. Dean Gitz was the attorney for Peggy Bucky, and Daniel Davis was the attorney for Ray Bucky, while Lael Rubin was the prosecutor. The prosecution chose to use eyewitnesses for their main case because they had a lack of medical evidence. Key McFarland became their key witness because she was the main member of the CII and led the interviews on the children. It was said that Key McFarland's interview techniques were not right and inaccurate, so when she became the key witness on stand, she tried defending her techniques, which ultimately led to Judge Ponders being even more skeptical. As well, the prosecution used child witnesses which repeated what they had said prior to the trial. The defense tried to use Judy Johnson's son, but because Judy Johnson had died from liver failure, the father would not let the boy go into court. When Peggy McMartin Bucky and Ray were called to the stand, it was clear in their testimony that they have never molested those children. On November 2, 1989, after nearly 30 months of testimony, the case was sent to the jury to make a decision. The jury deliberated for 2.5 months, and in their verdicts, they decided that Peggy Bucky was acquitted, and the 13 remaining charges against Ray Bucky had the jury hung. The aftermath of the first trial erupted the parents of the school and many Americans across the globe. People were mad at the justice system, and it caused riots in the street. This led to Ray Bucky being put on a second trial. In late January of 1990, after much pressure from the public, District Attorney Ira Rayner signed off on the retrial, charging Bucky on 8 accounts. There were a new judge and new prosecutors, Joe Martinez and Pamela Ferrero, in this trial. The case was presented by the prosecution in only 13 days, and they only had 11 eyewitnesses. Again, after much deliberation, the jury was hung and decided to acquit Bucky of 6 accounts and was only convicted of 1. Following, there was no retrial, but the aftermath left a big impact on the world and the children and families involved. The McMartin preschool was completely destroyed in 1991. These trials left a long-lasting impact on the nation and showed how much news coverage can truly influence a crime. This case became bigger than imagined and affected the lives of many of the people involved. Ray Bucky spent 5 years in jail before being released on bail, while the children were bombarded for years with questions during the trial. The parents felt betrayed by the justice system, and the community of Manhattan Beach, California, was in a constant spotlight. These trials have been used as a lesson that the justice system has learned from and will never be forgotten.